Hello and welcome. I'm Gab from Stalgard, and today I have another short update video on our up-and-coming game Veidr. Last video was about a month ago and a lot has been going on behind the scenes. I want to talk about 3 topics today. The camera, AI pathfinding / navigation, and our implementation of ECS. First off, the camera. We made some big changes here. As you can see, we switched from an isometric view to a third-person perspective, and we feel like a third-person perspective is much more immersive, and also it does more justice to the environments. Also, the main theme in Veidr is Norse mythology, and we definitely want to include some giant monsters that are in Norse mythology and battle against those in the game. And we feel like a third-person perspective does more justice to those battles as well. So as you can see, the camera can be a little janky sometimes. I don't know if you notice the stutters a little bit, but we feel like this is actually quite nice already. And even though the angle and distance are work in progress, we feel like this is a huge step in the right direction. Second, the AI pathfinding. For now, our only implemented enemy is this skeleton. And the skeleton makes use of the built-in nav mesh of Unity, which basically creates the areas where NPCs can move and navigate for you. And the result of this so-called nav mesh baking looks something like this. So you can see this blue kind of glow over all the terrain, and that's where the skeletons can move and other NPCs in the future. And you can see these kind of glitches in the terrain, but those are just visual artifacts and do not influence the behavior of the skeleton at all. Normally, you would use a navmesh agent, also made by Unity, to calculate the paths and move over the navmesh. However, because we wanted more control, I have implemented the navigation behavior of the navmesh agent inside our own movement scripts. And you can see a visualization of the paths that these navmesh agent creates as these cyan lines. I will turn off the navmesh so you can see it better. However, next to this like on rails navigation behavior, we also want the skeletons and other enemies to evade dynamic obstacles, such as other skeletons. And that's why I implemented a steering rig, or rather the steering rig. We are using the sensor toolkit package for this, which is a great, easy to use package that includes a flexible pre-built steering rig. I will now zoom in on one of the skeletons, for example. So as you can see, there is also these cyan lines sticking out of this skeleton, which act as its sensors. And if one of these lines is obstructed, it becomes red and the skeleton will try to steer away from those obstructed lines. And this behavior can too be a bit janky, but in the next few months I will be taking a university course on crowd simulation, which will probably help a lot with this. So look forward to an update on skeleton navigation, which will hopefully include them not bumping into each other and other things that much anymore. Lastly, our implementation of ECS. ECS stands for Entity Component System. In our case, it basically means that we try to split up the data and the logic that uses that data as much as possible. For example, instead of having a single health script that contains health data, like float current health and float maximum health, and also health logic, like take damage and heal, we want to split it up in separate components. One is called health data, which contains only data like current health and max health, and one called health controller, which acts upon that data. I know it sounds quite abstract, but bear with me. This whole splitting up makes every entity in our game very modular, where we can swap out data really easily without messing with any code. Also, in theory, it can prevent us from spawning and despawning entities all the time. We can just swap out the data it uses and bam, it's another entity. This has substantial performance benefits. It also makes modding support very easily, as we can just read modded data files and load those instead. Side note for the keen viewer, I know we don't really implement ECS the way it's supposed to, and that Unity has built-in ECS support, but that is all experimental and not production ready at this time, so... Anyway, I hope this all sounds very interesting, and if it did, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next update video.